my plan at 15 years old that I was going to end my life in my own bedroom. And I knew where the medicine cabinet was, and I grabbed more than enough, and I took quite a lot. And it didn't take very long for my body to begin to react. And what happens in that moment that it's becoming real, you really realize your heart says, you don't really want to die. You just don't want to feel like this. You just don't want to be empty. You just don't want to hurt. I'm laying there and I can feel like this is really happening. And I remember just saying, please let me live.
Thanks for tuning in to the Peaceful Presence podcast, where we share stories of faith, hope, and miracles. I'm Olivia Figuered. My guest today is Elizabeth Verver, and you're going to be so encouraged by her story. She's someone who knows what it's like to be completely broken, and then what it looks like when God steps in and completely transforms your life. Her testimony has been featured on the 700 Club and Life Today TV. And today, she's here to share with you how the love of God not only rescued her, but gave her a brand new identity and purpose, and it can do the same for you too. And before we meet Elizabeth, please remember to subscribe or follow this podcast. It helps spread these messages of hope and faith, and I truly appreciate your support. Welcome to the podcast, Elizabeth.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited to be here and just excited about just what God has planned and how he can take, like you said, that the broken season of our life and he can do something completely new with it. And I think right now, I just feel so very strongly that there's so many people that are hurting in this time that we're living in. And I think more than ever, we need to hear that gospel hope of Jesus Christ today. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm answering that call so that people can know that there is hope in these times.
Yeah, I think you're touching on a really good point. And I've often said we think we are so connected, but we're really not, and we are so disconnected. And I believe that it's through these stories and hearing hope through these stories that people start to tune in a little bit more and think, well, maybe there's hope for me, and start to get connected with the one who's inside us all. I know your life at a young age didn't start the way that you would have hoped. You've walked through some pain and trauma, and it led to years of addiction, depression. You had homelessness, and even moments of you wanting to give up on life. Why don't you take us back to where that all started and how that shaped your life and even your view of yourself?
Yes, I think that so many times the enemy starts when we're at such a young age, because when pain enters our life or we go through something traumatic, we really don't know how to process that. So we try to do the best we can. But also we have an enemy that's like, you know what, this is an opportunity, because he is always about wanting to steal, kill, and destroy in our lives before we even really know that that is happening. And so I remember just, being a normal 9-year-old, going to school, having friends, being happy. And all of a sudden, my world is coming down. And I do remember that there were times that my parents, they didn't quite get along, or there was yelling, or, those kind of things. And because my dad was an alcoholic and a drug addict. And my mother wanted to raise the children and have a family, and he wanted to party and be a rock star. And so there was this conflict going on, but we knew to just, okay, they're arguing. Let's just go play. Let's go outside, and didn't think anything of it. Just thought that was normal, because that's just how it was for us. Well, there was this one particular day we didn't talk about, dad's going to be leaving, we're divorcing or anything. I just remember seeing him packing up everything, and I just knew inside, like, something's different. I don't know what's going on, but something's going on. And so as I saw him like packing his stuff, and I'm standing on the porch, I'm 9 years old, and I was like, Daddy, are you coming back? Like, what's going on? And he looked down at me and he was like, no, I'm not coming back. And I thought, well, why? And he said, you're going to be okay. And he gets into the blue Z28. I'm the only one standing out on the porch, like, what's happening? Like, dad's leaving. Doesn't anybody else care? But they were playing or they were not home because I was one of six. And I watched my dad drive down the end of the road. It was about, three houses down. I can see it clear today. And I thought, he's going to look back. He's going to see me standing here and he's going to come back and he's going to realize this isn't what he wants to do. And he didn't even turn around. And I just remember my heart in that moment just breaking. And for a 9-year old, you don't really know how to process that. And so I kind of just went inside of myself. And then when I asked questions like, what's going on? Like, why did he leave? Why aren't we enough? And my mother was kind of going through her own thing. And so she didn't really know how to respond because she had a lot of anger. And so she was like, listen, he didn't want us. He didn't want us. And so when I heard that, I took that internally to mean he didn't want me. And so from that place, I opened my heart up to what we can all easily do, which is a spirit of rejection. And so at 9 years old, here it started with rejection, then came, self-hatred and just all kinds of hurt that I didn't really know how to process. So about at 15 years old, I'm thinking I'm unlovable. I'm not enough. Nobody cares about me. And this is just continuing to build on the inside of me that I decided I was going to try to take my life, that I didn't want to be a part of this. My mother really didn't know how to process it. So it elevated to more levels of just dysfunction that I just didn't want to be here anymore. And I just remember thinking, this is a waste of life. Like, there's no point in this. Like, to hurt like this, to feel like this, and this is what it's all about. I'd rather be done. And so I made my plan at 15 years old that I was going to end my life in my own bedroom. And I had even written a letter to my friend at the time. And, she called me and she was like, everybody feels this way, we at a young time, and things get better. You hold on, it'll get better for you. And I just remember like telling her, okay, I believe that, and making a promise to her that I wasn't going to do it. But I knew inside of myself, I didn't want to be alive anymore. If this is what life is about, people leaving you, people hurting you, not being enough, then what's the point? And
Right.
so we weren't raised really in a Christian home. And there was a season that before, at the age of 15, before I first attempted to take my life, that my mother started to turn to seeking something beyond us. And I remember, I think it was about a year that she decided, okay, I'm going to take the kids to church. We're going to go to church. And we went to a Baptist church. I can remember being a little girl, we would get dressed up and all of us would go, but I didn't really understand.
Okay.
I am 9, 10 years old. My life is falling apart. I'm not feeling loved. And now we're going to church. And I just remember being at Sunday school and they were so happy and they were singing songs and I loved it. And I was like, oh, okay, this could be fun. And then I got invited to an all night lock in. And I just remember, this is a happy place.
Mm.
Well, about a year into that, my mother decided we're not going back. And so when they show up at the door, she's like, everybody be quiet. We want them to go away. I'm like, but I want to go. I'm
Mm.
happy there. I didn't understand why, but I was like, I'm not happy here, but when I'm there, I'm happy.
Yeah.
And at 9, 10 years old, what do you want to be? You just want to be happy, And she said, no, we're not going back there. I don't want to go back there. And we, at that point, we did not return. I didn't know what had happened, which I did actually pray a salvation prayer one time in the Sunday school. But again, I don't know what's happening. I
Right.
don't know, did he really come inside of me? Like, and they're like, you are now a Christian. I remember the song learning, I am a C, I am a CH. But I didn't understand what that meant.
Right. You were just
But
following the prompts, but
yes,
you did it, and there was like this hope inside of you,
yes,
I would imagine.
yes. And I just remember like wanting to go back. And so when you pray that and you believe it,
Hmm.
it is truth. So even though I don't know what's happening and I don't understand it yet, I do believe that the Holy Spirit came into my life at that moment.
Yeah.
And so here I am. I don't understand it, so I don't keep up with it. I'm not reading my Bible. And now I'm diving deeper into not feeling good enough, depression coming in. We're not going there anymore, and my mother wants nothing to do with it. So we don't go to another church. We don't talk about it. And I'm like, "But mom, they said God is real. Is God real?" And then now she wants to tell me that, that's just something man makes up so that we behave.
Just a question for you. Now that there's years that have gone by, have you ever revisited this with your mom? Did something happen that turned her away? Do you even know?
No, we actually never talked about it. I'm still believing for my mother's salvation. Now, I know that she can see a difference in my life and
Mm-hmm.
she doesn't really fully understand it, but she doesn't question the reality of it for me.
Yeah.
However, she's like, I don't really want anything to do with that. I love God how I love God.
Sure.
And I respect that. But no, we've not really had those conversations. As to why. I don't know if they were like getting more into her stuff. Where's the dad? All of that, and who knows what happened. But all I know is all of a sudden, my happy place is being taken away from me.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm going to plummet even more, especially as I'm moving into adolescent years and I
Yeah.
can't process it. So here I am at 15. I'm very confused. Now, what I thought was real, I'm told, that doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
There's no heaven, there's no hell. God's not real. That's just something man made up and people wrote the Bible. And so now I'm like, well, what's the point of all of this?
Sounds
Like,
like so confusing, right? Just to
yes.
process all of this for you.
Yes. And so I'm like feeling just so empty. I just
Hmm.
remember that was the main thing that I can remember at that age is like, I'm just so empty. And I love that about God because He literally does create us to desire Him, whether we know it or not. And so here I am, 15 years old, and I'm struggling with all of it. And I decide, I'm going to start drinking. I'm going to start doing drugs. They look like they're having more fun. So I was always seeking. And so I get more into that lifestyle. And I didn't want to be like my dad. I
Yeah.
just remember feeling like I'm not going to do that. I don't want that. And now I'm moving more towards his lifestyle and his behavior. And so then what comes in? Shame. So now the doors of shame are being opened and it's just getting darker and darker. And so at the age of 15, I decide I'm going to end it. I don't want to do this anymore. And that's not shocking because today we have 11-year-olds, we have 12-year-olds, we have parents going into their rooms and discovering that they never talked about things that they were dealing with at school and now they're not here. And so that's not shocking at that age. We really need to watch our children. We really need to pay attention to when they're saying they really are struggling, that it's not for show. They
Yeah.
really are hurting and they're dealing with things that they don't really know how to process. Because
Yeah.
that's what it was for me. And no
Yeah.
one stopped to say, Elizabeth, how do you feel? What's going on? Because we were all trying to deal with it in our own way.
Hmm. I love the perspective that you have now, like even understanding where your mom was coming from, and I'm listening to you start to tell your story about walking into the same world that your dad was in, and I'm thinking she's getting perspective now on, where her dad came from and what he
Yeah.
was dealing with. And you paint a really clear picture of everybody's heart and where they're at through your story. And I, even at the beginning, saying about your dad and watching him, drive away, we hear stories about people who have been abandoned,
Yeah.
but you're painting this picture where I can feel it. I can feel a little 9-year-old just watching their dad leave, and the confusion and the rejection that you must have experienced, and the fact that it was you and your other siblings were out playing, like you probably took it the most personal because you were there. So I'm hearing this whole story and I'm seeing how it's all coming together, and how
Yeah.
God, you don't want to be going through all of this, but I can see where he's giving you perspective to later have down the road, so that other people listening to your story today can see where there's hope that comes from all of that. So anyway,
Yes. Yes. So
carry on.
So 15 years old, I decide that's the end of it. And I knew where the medicine cabinet was, and I grabbed more than enough. And I don't remember where everybody was at this time, but I was in my room that night and I took quite a lot. And it didn't take very long for my body to begin to react. And what happens in that moment that it's becoming real, you really realize your heart says, you don't really want to die. You
Mhm.
just don't want to feel like this. You just don't
Mhm.
want to be empty. You just don't want to hurt. And all of a sudden, that reality is crashing, and I'm like, but I'm so young, and I don't really want to die. I just don't want to live like this. And I remember just vomiting that entire night. And as that reality is hitting me, I decide I've got to tell my mother. I'm going to have to tell my mother. At this point, I can't walk. I remember crawling down the stairs. And here's the thing about crying wolf, because I didn't like school. So I would pretend to be sick quite a bit. But at this particular time, she didn't believe me. And
Wow.
and she was like, Elizabeth, you're going to school. Go back to bed. And I'm like, no, something's really wrong with me. Well, I go back to my room, and I'm laying there and I can feel like this is really happening. And I remember just saying, please let me live. And I just closed my eyes, and whatever happened, I was okay with. But at that point, my heart said, you want to live. And I remember waking up the next day completely fine. And I
Mm.
knew, not at that moment that God had saved my life, but that I lived through that because I was meant to be here. That's
Mm.
all I knew. And I was like, okay, if I'm supposed to be here, now I have to find why I'm supposed to be here. So I began to search. I began to dive into my music, which my dad was a musician. I began to pour myself into applying myself where I didn't care about it. I'm now like, okay, I'm here for a reason. I'm supposed to do something. I'm going to do it. And I decide that I'm going to go into musical theater. So now I go into theater and I just begin to develop talent and find purpose. And all along, these obstacles just continue to happen. Like my car burns up, and now I don't have a vehicle to go to college. And my mother wasn't really about doing anything that reminded her of my father, which my dad
Mhm.
was a musician. She's like, no, don't do that. I won't support that. And so now I'm struggling with trying to follow my heart, but then not being supported. And at that moment, at 18 years old, where my car burns up and I don't get to go to college. And I'm like, would you help me? And she's like, no, I'm not going to support that at all. You need to do something else. You need to go into the medical field. You need to do something that's going to actually give you a future.
Mm.
And so, what happens when dreams crash? And that was your new saving grace, right?
Mhm.
It's everything that you just poured all this time to have purpose, and now this comes crashing down. And what to do? I turned more to drugs. I was like, well, you can't have anything work here. So what's the point? And so I continue on to that lifestyle until I get a call. I'm living with a friend, and now it looks like it's going to turn really, really good because I had a wealthy aunt and uncle that we would go and visit with in Texas every other year. And we would get to, just hang out. They would take us to Six Flags and it was fun. And so they hear that I'm having some trouble. I almost overdosed in California. Like, I'm the talk of the family. Like, what is wrong with her? And they decided, okay, let's help her. Let's take her in and allow her to go to college and pursue music, whatever she's wanting to do, and help her. And I think this is it. Like, it can't get better than this, right? I'm going to get to stay in a mansion. I get to move to Texas. They said, if you apply yourself, we'll pay for, any kind of college that you want to go to. And I'm like, this is finally going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm going to
It's
get
all
to
coming
live my
together.
dream.
Hmm.
This is what has been, so hard to get through. So now I can live the life I'm supposed to live. Only come to find out, my uncle is also an alcoholic. And I ended up one night, by myself, um, told I couldn't go out. I had been going out for, you know, getting to know people my age. I don't want to hang out with my aunt and my uncle. I'm 19 years old. I need to go meet people and date and my aunt's out of town. And this particular night, my uncle was like, "You're not going out. You've been going out so much. You're staying home." Pretty much premeditating to drug and then rape me at the age of 19. And I never saw that coming. And here, when you've lost so much, you've lost this, at that point, I remember breaking in a place that I knew no one would ever be able to fix. And instead of having the support of your family, because you're coming up against someone who's very wealthy, who's money controlling so much in the family that you don't realize, that he's even helped your own mother or that he's paid for this and that nobody stood with me. And I remember feeling like if you don't have your family, you don't have anything. And so that's where I ended up leaving. I ended up homeless. I ended up trying to really find how I'm going to make it to the next day.
So much for one person to deal with, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But God is still in this story somehow because I remember when he took me back through some of these things, he was like, I'm not here for those who have it all together, but I am. But let me tell you who I'm really here for. I came for those who were sick. I came for those who were broken and don't have anybody. That's who I come for. And that's what he really began to do in my life. And so,
I'm 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 listening to you and again sharing all of this and I feel in my spirit like he is all of these things are happening and they're pointing you to who whose relationship really matters in your life, you know? It's like you're
mhm,
looking for it from all these different sources and people
mhm.
and it's like at some point I know in your story and you'll get to that it clicks on who the true source is for you.
Yes, but it was like all these, what you're talking about is right on. It was like all this sinking sand, like, okay, you may want to depend on your family, but that's sinking sand. Or you may want to depend on dreams or your purpose and your talent, but that's sinking sand. And I'm finding out that none of that is filling this place, this emptiness in me, nor is it fixing what really needs to be fixed in me. So I'm continuing to just search because I was searching. I knew like I'm here. I lived through that. I've got to be here for something. Why, how did I live through that night? I just remember knowing that. And again, I believe that he was with me since I was that little girl. And I just didn't know it, because I talk about salvation is not just really, um, us receiving God, but our awareness that God has always been there is
Great,
what salvation is really all about. And
great
so,
point.
yes, yes. And so now I'm out. I meet my fiance
Now
who I've
you left the house, you left uncle's house and you said you were homeless at this point, right? Because where do you go?
at this point I am going to basically shack up at a party house. Not a good place, because I'm a vulnerable person, and
Mm,
but I need a roof over my head,
yeah.
and that's what you do. And until I can kind of get on my feet, and I did have a job at that time to be able to get my own place, and I did end up being able to get my own place, but it wasn't good because I didn't really have anybody. I'm a state away from my family. They're in Oklahoma. I'm in Texas. I have some friends, but they're not really good friends. They're drug buddies and that kind of lifestyle. And so when I get my own place, loneliness really sets in.
Mm,
Like I realize I don't have family. I don't have they don't have my back. They don't understand. They don't know what I know about this person. And he basically turned the whole thing on me to say I seduced him.
mm,
And rather than, I mean, if you're looking at my lifestyle and everything else, who are you going to believe? This
mm,
wealthy man with a distinguished, people know him, and me, a drug addict. Whose story are you going to believe, really, right? And so I was the crazy one, the sick one, all of that. And nobody stopped to really hear my story or consider maybe he's lying, because he was. And so now I'm just trying to find my way. I loved my new job. I was doing makeup at the mall and really trying to take care of myself. And then I meet uh, my husband now of 23 years, but at that time, my new boyfriend, and he is just as broken as I am. He has lost his dad to cancer. He is doing drugs. And we just decide, you know what? We're just going to be together and we're going to do our drugs, and nobody's going to tell us anything. And this is going to be the life.
mm.
And what we find is that we are on a fast track to death. I mean, we're drinking and driving. I hate to admit that, but I didn't care.
Yeah.
I didn't care about me, and I didn't care about anybody else. And so I was just going to do whatever I wanted, and that was that. And in the middle of, I can remember one night where we had done drugs and drank so much that when we got behind the wheel, we literally almost went over a bridge and
Mm,
wrecked the side of my car. And it was so late at night, they didn't call the police or anything like that. Nobody saw it, but I remember looking down at the reality of what was happening and how easily we could just have gone over there, and that would have been the end. And I still at that point was like, but I don't care.
yeah.
Let it happen. I'd probably be okay with that, because that's just where I was. And so even though I was doing that, I wasn't thinking about the danger of other people's lives, because I didn't even value my own life.
Mm,
And he was the same way. He was so brokenhearted, at 21 years old, losing his dad to cancer, because he came from a broken home and his dad was everything. And so here we are, two very broken people just trying to exist.
yeah.
And right in the middle of that, he gets taken to jail. And that is his moment that Jesus comes to jail for him.
Mm,
And so I'm visiting him, and I end up staying in an abandoned house they're remodeling, and that was his uh, past employer who he worked for when he kind of just took care of him. Basically,
Yeah.
it was his dad's friend, and so
Gave him a
he
place to stay or
yeah,
uh
was always there when he was in trouble, just kind of like a father figure watching over him. And
yeah.
so when he said, you need to go see James and you need to tell him I'm in jail, and I was like, okay. So I knew how to get a hold of him. I said, hey, he's in jail. He said again, because this was kind of like his thing, and he's like, okay. And I was like, we were, trying to get a place together and, get straight and all of that. And he was like, where are you staying? I'm like, if I'm going to stay with him, I don't know. Because the place we were staying, she was in the middle of a custody battle. And she's like, if you're going to stay with this guy, you got to leave my house.
Mhm.
And so I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And he was like, we have this abandoned home that we're working on, but it's in the middle of January, Elizabeth, and we don't have electricity. It's not a good place in a great neighborhood, but you're more than welcome to stay there. And so that is rock bottom for me, because
Mhm.
now I don't even have a home. My fiance's in jail, and and like you can see, like this is not going to go anywhere. If I keep going like this, I'm going to end up, you know on the side of the road dead,
Right.
something, or overdosed. And so I go back on a Thursday, because it was Tuesdays and Thursdays to visit, and I told him, he gave me that place. I'm going to be staying there. I'm going to try to get a job, because I had quit another job. Like nothing could work in my life, because I had this, I don't care what happens. And so I never applied myself at anything. So I ended up losing that job, or, it's just a track of failure
Yeah.
after failure.
One thing after
Hmm.
another. Hmm.
And so next thing, I go to visit him on a Thursday. And he is so happy. He is so different. I knew immediately either something happened to him or he is high. And of course, I don't think anything happened to him. So I'm like, are you high? Are you getting drugs in there? Like, how are you even doing that? He's like, no, 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 no. I went to chapel. I gave my life to God. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? Are like you're not high? And he was like, no, I'm starting over, and when I get out of here, we're gonna get married, we're gonna serve God, we're gonna live for him. And I'm like, he's crazy. There's no way I'm doing that. But here's what sounded good: we're gonna get married. And I was like, oh, that sounds nice.
Mhm.
That sounds, I could do that. I really like this guy. But
Yeah.
at the same time, I'm like, no, I don't talk to God. I don't believe in God. And he's like, that's okay. I'm praying for you. And I'm like, oh no, this is turning bad.
Well, you talked in the beginning about when you went to church and had that, this was your happy place, but did somewhere in your story, did you just have this abrupt, I don't believe in you anymore, like all these things are happening to me, or did you even think about that?
It was kind of both. I
Hmm.
remember like, no, they said it's not real.
Yeah.
And so I'm not gonna believe in something that's not real. And then secondly, if this person really does exist, well, why is all this happening to me? And so that person couldn't possibly be good. And
Mm.
so that was my new belief about it. And
Sure.
so I turned more towards angry when it came to talking about God.
Hmm.
And people would come up to me, and it's crazy to even think about this, but I would just curse them out. I was like, do not tell me about no effing this and that. And they would just turn around and go, they're like, we ain't talking to her. And I tell my kids that, and they're like, mother, we could never see you doing that. I'm like, I know. Isn't that wild? But that's what God does. And so I remember going back and he was praying for me. And at this point, I am listening to, what he's sharing. But I remember going back one of the times he started talking about how he has this peace he can't explain. And he talks about that. And I'm like, peace? I don't even know what that would feel like. What do you mean? He's like, I just know that everything's going to be okay. And I'm like, that's amazing. Like,
Mm.
I couldn't even imagine what that would feel like. Well, that got me thinking. So when I go back and I am freezing in this place, like, I remember just shivering myself to sleep and crying. I'm like, peace? Is that even possible? It got me thinking. And I kept, listening to him. Well, I just got to the point where I couldn't stay at that place, and so I'm thinking I have to go back to Oklahoma. I can't do this anymore. And I remember telling him that, and he said, "No, no, no. We're going to be okay. I don't know how long I'm going to be in here because that was a whole nother thing. They would say, okay, we're getting you an attorney, and then we wouldn't have an attorney, and then it would just be postponed. And I was like, I can't live like this anymore for
Yeah.
anybody."
How long had he been in prison before he had this transformation?
He was in there about 2 weeks.
Okay. And
And then
then
this is a month later now. He
okay.
ended up staying 52 days. But at
Okay.
this point, at a month later, I'm like, I'm barely making it. I'm, trying to handle everything and stay afloat. And I'm like, and
Yeah,
then,
you're coming home to a lonely, cold, abandoned house every day.
yes,
So that's yeah, there's
yes.
that. Mhm.
And so, well, he had met a friend in there who taught him how to pray and all of that. And he was telling him about the situation, and he said, I want her to meet my mother-in-law. I think that she would be a real encouragement in her life. And so I go, it's a Tuesday now, and he's like, she's here, she's visiting him, she wants to talk to you. And I'm like, no, I am not talking to anybody. Like, I had walls upon walls.
Yeah.
No joke. And I'm like, I don't want to meet her. No, I'm not going to go talk to her. I don't even know her. He's like, listen, she wants to meet you, and I think it would be a good thing. And she's already here, two places down. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he's doing this to me.
Mhm.
But at the same time, I was like, all right, fine. And here she comes. She is just this happy, energetic. I'm like, whoa, lady.
Slow down.
And it's so funny because that's how I am today. And the Lord has to be like, okay, you can't go all love on this person. They have some stuff. And I'm like, oh, okay, Lord. I'll be
Mhm.
calm. But I just remember that, and it was so it was irresistible to me. I'm like, no one is that happy. How is she that happy? Like, what's her game? What's her angle? And she said a simple question. She was like, can I just take you out to dinner? Have you eaten? And I was like,
Mhm.
no, actually, I have not. And I would love that. And we went to dinner. Now, later on, we've had conversations about this meetup. And I asked her because she didn't just take me in, you guys. She took me in after that night. She gave me her room, which would be the room that she just quietly placed the Bible on, that one day when I came home distressed would open up and God would open my eyes to the truth. She gave me a space to pour out my heart and listen, and she cooked for me like a mother would, and that's what she did. And we've gone back and talked about that night, and I was like, how would you just let somebody you don't know, a drug addict, into your life, invade your room? Like, who does that? She said, because when I was sitting at dinner with you, the Lord spoke to me and he said, I want you to take her in, and I want you to treat her as if I were your guest.
So sweet. Makes me cry a
Yes.
little bit.
I, I, I
I'm
to
feeling for you and yeah.
Today, I still talk to her. She's Mama Kay. She
Mhm.
shows up on my life. She's like, Mama Kay's here. And I'm like, this woman was the real deal. Like, when
Mhm.
people say love compels you, and love is irresistible and it's the Father's heart, that's what she did. And I couldn't resist it. And that's how God got in my heart. Now, when she first started to talk to me about God, I was like, I don't believe in that. She's like, that's okay because he believes in you. She always had the most wisest and kind comeback at everything I would say. No, I don't believe in that. And she would be like, well, he believes in you. And I'm like, that's okay. That's great. I'm not going
Mhm.
to go to church. That's okay. We are the church. I'm like, this lady.
I like her.
I love her. She's amazing. And I remember this one point because I would listen to her because she got in my heart, right?
Mm.
And so I'm going here and visiting him, and now he's talking about peace, and now I got this woman coming at me. There's no escape. God is going to get me. And so she would I would say, well, I've got so much that I don't know how I can get through. Like, I don't think I'll ever be okay. And she said, but that's God's specialty.
Mm.
That's, you are not powerless. I remember her saying that so many times. Like, Elizabeth, you think that you are, but you're not powerless over all of that. And God can change everything in a moment. And I thought, all right, I'm listening.
She keeps planting seeds of hope in you, and in just the slightest and sweetest way.
Yes, yes. And but before I got to all of that place before he went to jail, there was another moment and it was the second attempt and I was in a trailer, at that point and for the first time when I almost took my life that time, I did hear God's voice. And before I met her, he said something to me. He said, before I knew that it was him, he said, you don't really want to do this. And if you hold on, you'll never feel like this again. Meaning that you're going to go through things, but you'll never be going through things without me. And so at that moment when I knew that, and I was coming off of a high, so I thought maybe I was just hearing voices.
Did you hear this audibly?
I did. I
Okay.
did. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And that was before he went to jail
Hmm.
and we were trying to get things,
So before
going.
he went to jail, you had another attempt on your life, even though you're with this person that you were connected
Yep,
with?
yep.
Okay.
And that was the next sinking sand because,
Hmm.
the world will say love in a relationship will solve all your problems. And so here now I have somebody that cares about me and I care about that person, but I can't fix what's on the inside. And so I'm like, there's nothing. If
Yeah.
if we don't have family and we can't have our dreams and now this doesn't work, there's nothing. It's all a lie. And so when I was coming down on a high in that place, he had left with a friend and they were going to go steal things to make rent. And I'm like, I can't live like this. And
Mhm.
that place was disgusting. Like, that was the reality of that one. And so he came into that place and spoke to me there.
Gotcha.
And all of a sudden, that's when I started to have hope because it was like he planted that in me that maybe I could get married. Maybe I could be happy. And so when he said that when he was in jail, I was like, maybe that would work. And then he started talking about peace. I was thinking, maybe that's real.
Yeah.
And so here I see this woman and she has it. She's living it. And I'm like, it's real. But can it work for me?
Hmm.
That's where my question was like, you didn't go through this and you didn't go through that. And she's like, oh, I've been through things, honey. But that's his specialty. And that's when she talked to me about, have you ever read the word? I was like, no, I don't. I tried to read that crazy book. It's because you don't start from the beginning, y'all. I was like, I tried to read that crazy book. But when I came back from visiting him and I opened the Bible, I'll never forget it. I opened it to Deuteronomy 28 and I read through that, the whole thing where it says blessings and it says this. And all of a sudden, God opened my eyes and I knew He was real. And that's what was wrong with my life. It was like a moment. I was like, this is it. This is what I've been looking for my entire life.
He was the missing piece to your puzzle.
That's exactly what I call him. I didn't know how to pray or salvation prayer or anything, and I don't even know if she was home. But I remember getting down on my knees in that apartment, in that bedroom, and I gave my life to the Lord. And I remember saying, I'll never forget it. I remember saying, I don't have much to give, and my life is such a mess. But if you can do anything with it, you can have it all. And I'm just so thankful. These are happy tears, y'all, because I think about what would have happened if he didn't come into my life. Where would my children be? Where would my life be? What about the 23 years that I've had with my husband? My life would be completely different, and that was the best decision I ever made. And y'all, I've gone through things since then. You know, I almost lost my son having him, and we faced losing him and losing my life. But at that point, I was like, I know you. I know where I'm going. That's okay. But we conquered that together. And I know no matter what, I have someone that I've looked my entire life for, that nothing in this world can ever take away from me or compare to. And so today, that's what I get to help others discover. There's somebody that can take your mess and they can change everything. And so, one of the scriptures the Lord gave me about, because a lot of people I talk to, they're like, you don't even look like what you came from. And I said, well, what happened in that moment is because I had nothing, and I lived radically on that side, that when I came to his arms, I was like, I'm going all the way with God. Like, I mean, I'm going to pursue him. I am going to cling to him, that he became my happy place. And so once I was addicted to all these other things I say, but today, I'm addicted to God. I'm addicted to his presence. I'm addicted to hope. And nothing can ever take that away, no matter what you go through. And so if I tell him, if it took me all of that to find you, it's worth it. And it really, really is, when it becomes that real to you. And so what happened is the truth of 2 Corinthians 5:17 happened in my life. And that's what I tell them. I'm like, it's okay if that you came from addiction. It's okay if that happened. Or, these things that we think damage us or shatter us and will never be okay from. That's not true with God, because he says this means that anyone who belongs to Christ has become a new person. So what happened from that moment is, if I give all that to God, I become his. And now I'm going to go on a journey to discover what that looks like. What does it mean to be his? How do I live this life now? His, because y'all, I had a lot to get through and come out of and change. But it started from that moment on, and I never looked back.
And so was your transformation was pretty immediate. Did you have desires or struggles? I mean, I'm thinking of somebody listening that's either going through something that you were going through, or a loved one of theirs maybe. Was this an overnight change to where it erased all of the desires cold turkey, or were you still tempted at all? Did you have any part of that in between?
That's a good question, because for me it was a little bit of both. I
Hmm.
knew that the desire for the new life that I was experiencing was stronger, but I also knew I had a lot of strongholds.
Yeah.
There was going to be some spiritual warfare. There was going to be some growing up in this, and he was not going to make it easy. And
Hmm.
so my healing process, although my salvation was secure, And that really happened when pressure came. Stuff would come out. Old habits would happen. I'm now going to have to work through forgiveness of that uncle, which I wanted nothing to do with. So
Hmm.
it was not a one and done. It was in my spirit.
Yeah.
I knew that and I had to learn about that. But the working out your salvation with fear and trembling was a long journey.
Hmm.
And so that's what I love about what I get to do today is like I know what it's like to believe and have faith, but I also know what it's like to struggle in that place and not feel worthy or to not feel capable. And so I get what it feels like to have hope but also have a broken heart.
Yeah.
And it can feel like so confusing. So, when I sit down with someone who's walking through grief, but they're a strong believer, but she's like, but I don't know who I am. I get it because you're in a middle of a hard place or a broken place and more comes out in that God wants to refine. And so
Hmm.
my long and slow process and it was long and slow, and my husband was very um he just was such a blessing in that I know something's wrong with her, but I know that God is in her life and that she's going to be okay. Because there were some days that he said he would sit in the driveway and he would say, God, is today going to be a good day or is today a bad day? Because I may have gotten, out of addiction fast, but suicide, that was still a process because I still didn't feel worthy. And so here I am, a young mom, and I'm not feeling worthy. And now I'm like, all these things start coming up when he wants me to forgive. And now I'm going through a place where, like, this is hard. I don't think I can be the person you want me to be. I don't think you can use me. And so I was so back and forth that I literally was like feeling like two people.
Yeah.
But
I, I love that you're sharing that because this happens to everybody going through something, no matter what their struggle is. It's just,
yeah,
and when you said there was something in you that just wanted this a little bit more, there's a song that I always go back to that they played in church. It's Raise a Hallelujah. And in the
yes,
chorus, it says, sing a little louder. And as soon as I had heard that song for the first time in my mind, I just saw that's what we have to do. Like this desire has to just be a little bit stronger. So for change to happen in somebody's life, this has got to be a little bit louder, a little bit stronger than the other, and you just got to keep pressing in. And if you fall back, it's okay.
yep,
It is okay, and we've all been there, but you just continue to sing a little louder and press in. There are so many things. I can't even contain it that I'm listening to with your story. Like I love how you talked about the sinking sand because I love that. I'm a visual person and I love that
yes,
analogy. I love when you talked about, I think it was the moment where you almost went over the road and you just said you didn't really care because you just didn't have value in your life and you didn't even value what would happen to yourself, let alone others. Which brings me to this, the scripture where it says to love yourself or love your neighbor as you'd love yourself. And that's taken on a new meaning to me recently because
yes.
it's like the key in there is loving yourself. And
Hmm.
are we really loving ourselves? Because you can't really love your neighbor until you do. And it was like you
Right.
had that moment where you surrendered. And then it was like, okay, now I can start to love myself, which is really loving God in you. And then
Yes.
you're able to start the healing process through loving the others around you. And I don't know, there's just so many like messages and
Yes.
through your story. I love every bit of it. But anyway, so here you are now, and you said the transition or the transformation
Hmm.
it's happening, but you're
Hmm.
walking through some hard things. You started to touch on with your uncle and forgiveness, and I would love to ask you because I think there's so many people that struggle with
Yes.
how do I forgive somebody with walking through that kind of trauma? How
Yes.
did you begin to do that?
Well, that's something that the Lord often has me open up to different clients and women, and just like, because that is literally a key that will open the door to the other side. And at the time when I didn't understand that, God allowed me to say, okay, I'm going to show you what my word says about why it's important. Because if you don't forgive, I can't forgive you. And you need my forgiveness in your life. So, not being selfish, but I was like, okay, that's true. I do need that in my life. But Lord, that's a hard one, you know. And that's when he told me about I needed to forgive my dad and I needed to forgive my uncle. And he said, you can't go forward into what's next for you until you do this. And you're not going to feel like you forgive them, and you're not even going to want to, but you're going to make a choice. And that's what's going to matter. And he said, and here's how you're going to be able to do it. I want you to see it how I see it. Because your father didn't have me in his life, he couldn't be the father that you needed him to be. And all of a sudden, I hurt for him. I'm like, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, how could he have done any better? Right? And then the same thing with my uncle, because I'm like, Lord, now that was evil, but he's like, that was done to him. At which there was talks of that in the family and stuff, but nobody really told me. And so he was like, he's broken and I love him. And then he opened my eyes to that we don't wrestle with flesh and blood. He's like, what tried to destroy your life wasn't even your uncle, wasn't even your father. It's your real enemy. And when he began to teach me about that, my perspective changed. I suddenly now had God's perspective that these are broken people that don't know what they're doing, and how else could they do anything better? And all of a sudden, it became easy to forgive in that place. And so, like, that's just a one-on-one with him, and asking, like, because you want to be willing, then what does the Bible talk about? He helps us to do what we can't do. But all he needs first is, are you willing? Are you willing to say yes to this? Are you willing even to do it by faith when you don't feel anything? Because, and the truth is, when it's hard like that, or you've been wronged, or you've been betrayed, and I believe that somebody's going to hear this right now, it's not about feeling, it's about your choice. You are choosing to do it God's way for the betterment of your life. It's freedom for you. And that to me gave me the courage to be able to do what was going to set me free.
Do you think that, I'm just thinking of this out loud, do you think that in order to truly forgive others, do you feel like you have to be in a place where you are seeking forgiveness, or you've really experienced being forgiven? Do you think that that needs to come first before you can
I
truly start
think
to forgive?
I think it's both. And I think
Mhm.
that it's personal. Like, God is not going to really ask you to do something that you're not ready to do. So
Mhm.
it's a whole process with him that you're walking through. I think of it like layer upon layer. Like, he knows at the moment that you're not ready. He's like, "Okay, we're not going to talk about that."
Mhm.
But he at the same time is wanting you to develop your relationship of trust with him, because I had a lot of trust issues, and I didn't understand a father figure or God my father. And so there's a lot of that personal relationship that's going to happen first before you're really going to trust somebody to really go into those places as well. And so I think it's so important just to develop that relationship with God, and that he knows what you need when you need it.
So where are you now? Take us to the now, and what has transpired since, you've established your relationship and closeness with God.
I am living this dream life, getting to know him so much more every day, knowing that, you know, even if we have hard times, and you can look at the times that we're in, that I have a father who really, really loves me and is never going to leave me or abandon me. And he is the most amazing person. So I'm just living that life, discovering him more and more. Even going to deeper trust
Mhm.
where normally I wouldn't feel safe. I'm like, but Lord, we have history. I know your heart. I know you. And then being able to help others to see him that way. And really, I am enjoying seeing the blessing generation for my children. That they do not have to walk through what we did and broke off of our family because, you know, I'm just loving that. I'm like, oh my goodness, you have to understand what a gift God gave you to know him at such a young age, to learn to hear his voice and the plan that he has for you at your young age. And I tell them, and I'm honest with them, because I'm like, do not take this for granted, because you can go search here and there, and you're going to come back to realize you have the best gift you could ever have been given.
Mm.
So I'm enjoying that
Yeah.
because I think, my goodness, what it would have been like to be 16, 17 years old, going off to youth camp, getting filled with the Holy Spirit, discovering your purpose and relationship with God at that age. I'm like, you guys, y'all have it made.
Yeah, and I think you touched on it. You watched this with your uncle, and that this was, he is following the pattern of what he was taught. You experienced that with, the alcohol and kind of following what you saw in your father, and you were able to break that pattern for your children and give them a life that, you know, you you didn't get to experience at that age. And you have four children, you said now, right? And they're older now, and you said been married
Yes.
23 years. Is that correct?
Yes,
Hmm.
yes. And I got to, God is so good though, because his grace always abounds over. I got to be a stay-at-home mom for 17 years. And those times that I didn't get to be happy or play Barbies and board games, I got to do that with them. I got to, I was the mother that wanted to go and play the Barbies with them. And they still talk about that. They're like, Mother, you wanted to do everything with us. I'm like, yes, you guys, because God was allowing me to live a childhood that I never got to experience.
They're
And
like
so,
they're like in high school, and you can just let's just play the Barbies again.
and no, now my oldest daughter, she calls me bestie. She's like, Mother, you're my best friend. And so your daughters or your children, they grow up and they get to be your best friends. And so that's happening with her, and we're just loving it. God is he's so faithful.
Let me ask you, Elizabeth, what would you want every listener to walk away believing about God as they listen to this episode?
Wow. I actually have my favorite scripture I want to share. And like I said, I was searching my whole life, and even we can do that later on. We can think like, okay, when I get to have this successful business, or I get to do this, or when my dreams come true, then I'll really have the life I always wanted and I'll be happy. And that is what, in my searching every single time, it fell apart and it wasn't true. But the one thing that satisfied me, that filled that emptiness, that I wake up every day and want to live, because today it's different. I wake up and I'm like, I want to be alive. I want to see what God has planned for this day. See, it just makes me want to cry. But I want to see my children grow up and live their best life. I want to see who I'm going to meet today that needs the Lord. And it's in Psalm 27:4. And I would just leave you with this. The one thing I ask of the Lord, the thing I seek most, is to live in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, delighting in the Lord's perfection and meditating in his temple. I like to think of his temple like his presence, that secret place that when you have him in your life, you are always welcome to. You don't have to try to figure it out. You don't have to try to fix anything. You just run to the one that can and that will. And every single time, he's going to get you through it because that's just who he is. And fall so madly in love with Jesus that it changes your life forever.
Well, I don't think you could say it any better than that. And I think it's important to hear that where you said, run to the one who knows how to fix it, because even you could attest, I'm sure, that when you've changed your life and you gave it to him, you still had things to work through. Just because somebody listening out there says, okay, I'm going to try this, it doesn't mean that they're not going to experience things that, that life challenges us. And so I just don't want people to always think that once they do this, everything is picture perfect, because it's still not, but you have
No.
that peace inside and you have that temple that you were just describing in this presence that you can turn to. And I mean, I know I speak for myself, that it has forever brought me comfort to know that I know where to go. I always just know
Yes.
where to go and who to go to. And there's nothing more than that. He's the one thing that just cannot change in this
Yes.
world of constant change.
Yes.
Mm.
What a security
Yeah.
we have in the Lord.
Well, I have so enjoyed this story, and I'm so grateful that we were able to connect and I could have you be on this podcast. And I really just hope that if, somebody is listening to this story and it's stirred in their heart, that they recognize that this is an invitation for them too.
Hmm.
I think your story just brings a lot of hope to people. Where can our audience go to learn more about you, connect with you, find out what you're doing?
Well, that is an easy place, all in one place, my website, and that's www.elizabethverver.com. So that will have, all upcoming live streams or Bible studies or whatever we have going on. Um, you'll find it there. And then we just launched a brand new YouTube channel. The Lord was like, I really want you to get out there and help my hurting daughters. And so I said yes. And we started Precious Promises because they are, learning about the promises of God that are washed in the blood of Jesus, because that's our security and our hope. And so I would love to invite you to come and subscribe and be there with us as
Yeah.
well.
And I will make sure to put links in the description so that if you're listening and you want to go back to that you'll have access to do so. Anything last on your heart to share before we close?
No, I think we wrapped it up. God, I just love how whenever Mama Kay said, God specializes in fixing what looks like can't be fixed, and that's what makes him God. And so whatever situation, like you were talking about, it's not like it's a one and done. Just this last year when God was putting on my heart to start the channel, my husband was in a motorcycle accident. And then the beginning of this year, my daughter was in a car accident, but we knew our security was in God. And of course, they came out of that and they lived through that, but that's not always the case. And so it doesn't mean that life is going to be perfect. It just
Right.
means that you're not going to do it alone.
I love that. And just to also say this, because I did make note of that, all of the people, the Mama Kay, I think you said his name was James, that
Hmm.
helped your now husband, like all of those people that felt it on their heart to help you. I just want people listening to, just when you feel that impressed in your heart to offer some kindness to somebody, you know,
Yeah.
if it's impressed on your heart, to follow through with that, because those seeds matter, and
Hmm.
they've obviously changed a life and changed many lives. So I'll give a shout out to those people myself, and just thank you for what they've done for you and for your husband and your now
Hmm.
family. And it just goes to show like what one small act of kindness can do and lead to. So yeah,
Yes,
anyway.
absolutely. I agree 100%.
Well, thank you again for being my guest today. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. If you feel like this episode could benefit somebody, please share it with them. And remember to subscribe for more faith building and inspirational content. Thanks, everyone.